All right, welcome finally to America This Week live on Monday. I'm Matt Taibbi.
And I'm Walter Kern.
And thanks everybody, and thanks to you, especially Walter, for being patient with me last week when I was out of it. Had kind of a little ordeal there, the kind of thing that gets to be scary when you reach a certain age, and it was really weird what happened. So I want to apologize in advance if I'm a little behind on certain things because I didn't start reading until last Friday. So so it's been an interesting week. There's a lot of stuff I have to get caught back up on, but
Matt, can I play Barbara Walters for a minute?
Sure, yeah.
Even though it looks to the world, if you can see me, like I'm the one who is recovering from concussion, because I'm 3 days from finishing a book.
Wait, does that mean 21 days? Are we in these writer days, or
they are writers' days? But I'm already counting in sort of like not just dog days, but like camel days or something.
Gotcha.
So I've reverted because of pressure from my publisher to measuring time in human days, and being out just a few days, which I think anybody can see is written all over my face, either 3 days from finishing a book or from permanent hospitalization. I was like you, not reading, not in touch with the world, total Rip Van Winkle, even styled my hair after old Rip just for the show.
That's so funny. He came up over this weekend when my wife and I were talking about stories about people who were unconscious for a while. But anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, also, so my first question is, you had a concussion.
Mm-hmm.
Now, few people will admit to a concussion in public without giving more detail because it's assumed that it was a concussion had in the service of, Sergeant Jim Beam or, Captain Jack Daniels.
No, sadly it wasn't, and which is funny because I have a whole lifetime of bad accidents, including falling drunk off a donkey on the side of the Moscow River when my friend sent me home after a birthday party. Didn't get a concussion then. I got beaten pretty badly in Moscow once to the point where had to be hospitalized. Didn't get a concussion there.
By the secret police or just somebody on the street?
No, someone trying to rob me, basically. Okay. I wouldn't give up a watch that my dad had given me. Okay. So, but the whole thing was just stupid. Well, first of all, I have to reveal something that's really ironic, which is that for the last year or so, I've been working on, let's say, a non-journalistic writing project, that one of whose features is a character who hits his head and has a sudden and dramatic personality change. So that is something that is
that old plot device. This is obviously a work of fiction.
It's a work of fiction. Yeah.
Are there any twins involved?
There are brothers involved. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're homing in.
Yeah, exactly.
No actual time travel. Just somebody who has a personality shift. Okay.
So that was in the backdrop of this, but it was just stupid. I live in a very unusual house. If people haven't, I've never shown it, but it's sort of on stilts. It's like upside down.
It's the reason I sometimes bring up UFOs on the program without anybody realizing it.
But got locked out of the house, and the only way to get into the house was to climb up onto the roof of of this structure and jump down to a lower part of the house, and then try to enter through the garage. Basically, it's a long and not very interesting story, but I just jumped from a a height that would have been no problem, when I was 22 and a basketball player.
Onto a
And
level surface, or from a sloped
yeah,
surface to a sloped?
Onto a level surface that has like rubber,
Right.
on it to prevent the rain from getting through and everything.
But
So
over a gap.
no, just onto a flat surface. And
Oh, wow.
I don't know what I landed on my feet, but I must have hit my head. I don't remember what happened, and I was out for a good long while. And
Alone.
no, my wife and kids were like, I don't want to get into there. There were some horrible things that happened.
Hey, Dad's asleep on the roof.
Right, and
No,
not
he's
moving,
not asleep.
basically,
Yeah.
But they woke me up when I finally came to. I remembered my name, my date of birth. Did not know who the president was. It's a funny thing in those situations.
These talks haven't penetrated very deeply if you can't remember who the president was.
Yeah, well, what was funny about that is my reaction wasn't, it's alarming that I don't know who the president is. It was more, what an annoying question. Why would anybody bother me with that question? Like,
Fascinating.
It was very strange.
A glimpse into your subconscious.
Yeah, definitely. So, I was out for a while, went and, went to a local hospital. They took great care of me, did the scans and all that stuff. And I went home, thought everything was cool, but then, for a good 5-6 days after that, I was just like in very intense pain and couldn't read, couldn't do anything. It's just one of those things where there's no position to be comfortable in. So anyway, this is all boring, but
no. It's only boring because you've heard it already and been asked to say it probably a zillion times. But to Herr Dr. Kern, it's a very interesting case. You mentioned personality changes in your fictional version of yourself. But I imagine that when you came to not caring who the president was, there may have been other alterations, slight, however, but noticeable. Have you noticed any?
Well, certainly a lot of things go through your mind after something like that. Like, think things get put in perspective. I noticed that I didn't particularly care what was going on with politics and didn't particularly miss anything that was happening online. So yeah, obviously some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about this week, the No Kings protests, neither of us really paid any attention to that over the weekend. And what's funny about it is that if you can sort of match the medical mayhem or the medical mystery to the fact that who even knows what happened? Like, yeah, you talk to one person and it's the biggest protest of all time, and another person tells you that there was like literally nothing there. So I have no idea.
So Matt, truer words have never been spoken. If you're Walter, who's basically joined the bear population of Montana, though he gets to go inside at night, and the No Kings protest happened, and I happened to be in town, in my town of 7,000, I would have seen what my wife saw, here was her first-hand report. We live next to a beauty shop. And she saw the beautician like leaning out the window, maybe smoking a cigarette, her elbow on the sill. And all she said was, "Hey, Peg, come out. You got to see this thing. It's crazy."
Well, was it crazy because there was a lot of people, or was it crazy?
No,
because
I don't know. I think it might have been because of the signs. Apparently, from all I can reconstruct, they were instructed to be a merrier, less ominous bunch this time. Because remember, we just had another one during the summer. And it was emphasized in many of the headlines, quote unquote, that there was a street party atmosphere.
Oh, yeah. What was that headline in the Times? It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was playful. No Kings protests against Trump bring a street party vibe to cities nationwide.
That means in political terms more cowbell, like
Right, yes,
like
exactly.
literally. Let's put a little bit more Woodstock into this 75th reunion of Woodstock or whatever it is. But there it is.
So that's the AP. Oh, that's the AP version, right? Okay.
The New York Times rather soberly informed us that it was no longer in the business of, when it covered protests, counting how many people attended them. Rather, it was going to delve into the quality and flavor.
Oh, really?
Yes. I know because I tweeted about it. I said they say this when there aren't that many people, but then I got, in an attempt to surface from my, book coma, or my literary submarine, I saw a Twitter post which suggested that MSNBC, in its coverage of this huge overhead roiling crowd, had actually run footage of a past protest on the Boston Common. And, I looked at it and read the threads, and I saw the footage cited elsewhere and so on. And, Walter, just put it this way, I'm not too good to read the like kookiest, highly partisan, beyond partisan threads,
Right. Yeah.
And so, there were a lot of people who, of course, wished for this to be fake. And so I said something about it because I couldn't believe it. I was like, if MSNBC has gotten to the point where they're misrepresenting, the year in which crowds are being filmed, it's time they detach from NBC. It's time they did, and
so Geller needs that last meal, I think. Yeah.
So I sent that baby off for like a day, and went back to the end of my book, and came back with someone who would have liked it to be a small crowd, saying, Walter, if you want to be a credible person, you really need to check your sources. That is very authentic footage, and MSNBC has, proved it somehow. So I said, oh, quick. Do I look like a person who wants credibility? Desperately. Those of us who strain to have it must appear to have it. So I took it down. And then afterwards, somebody said, why did you take that down? That was fake. I said, no, I was told after I was told it was fake that it was real. And they were like, no, it's been proved that it was fake. And then I just said, I will never see a generic shot of an overhead crowd again and make any comment whatsoever, especially in the age of AI.
Yeah. It's really strange because I was actually at the Boston Common protest that was massive.
That this was supposedly representing as having happened on Saturday.
Yeah, so I think what they're referring to is a post Charlottesville protest.
Yes, it was.
And I went there. There were some members of my family who were going there to protest. I was there for Rolling Stone, and it turned out to be like 500,000 protesters and a handful of mentally ill people in a gazebo in the middle of Boston Common. Like there was no counter protest really.
Right.
So it did look a little bit from the air like that same day, but who knows, right? And so that's what makes. Can we look at SOT 9? This is MSNBC, and now we have. By the way, Walter, this is the phenomenon where it's not even the movie stars are younger than us now. It's the kids of the kids of the on-air talent who are now on air commenting.
Who's this guy?
Jake Trailer, I think is his name. Anyway, let's hear what he has to say about the significance of whatever happened.
Where does this kind of public protest actually get funneled? Is it just the midterms? That's still a year away.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's one that Democrats are obviously thinking through right now.
Yeah.
This was a surprising and an impactful amount of people that showed up across the country. Thousands of protests, millions of Americans showing up. That's substantial. Where exactly does this go? I do think midterms is a really like key marking place to look at.
Yeah.
But I will say too, and I spoke with a lot of individuals about this too, and it halfway answers your question, but a lot of individuals were concerned because they really do feel like the second Trump administration looks vastly different from the first one, in that they just don't seem to care in the same way. They're not willing to reach across the aisle. And I know we'll later talk about the government shutdown, but it even translates to that a little bit, where I keep having White House officials telling me Trump is lacking a sense of urgency to reach across the aisle and reach some kind of a deal here. It looks the same here. The White House officials I spoke with yesterday saying, can't you at least say it's notable that millions of Americans are out protesting in this way?
Yeah.
Their response is truly just, we are here to focus on the people that are happy and pleased with the things that we're doing. We're less concerned with the other side. That's a scary thing in American politics, and we're seeing it increasingly in the second term.
Yeah, because presidents are supposed to be the president for all Americans.
Man, they ran that kid through the Wonder Bread machine. He's a real neither nor, either or, this and that. You know, it's too bad that everybody doesn't agree about everything. He'll fit in nicely at some future mid-wit network.
I always wonder when somebody uses the word individual too many times in a recitation. I always wonder if the person has background in law enforcement. It seems like a thing that cops do in their write-ups of crime scenes.
So I used to know, you know, I wrote a book about him, a psychopathic murderer, who I didn't know when I befriended him that he was a psychopathic murderer. He pretended to be a Rockefeller. And after he was revealed to be, you know, the next thing to Ted Bundy, I noticed that he always started, after I asked him something, with the reflection that it's so interesting you asked. And I realized, just as that kid said, that's a great question, that it takes the space of 4 or 5 words for almost all people in public who are faking what they're saying to invent what they're going to say over the next 30 seconds.
Right.
So, you know, they pack into 5 seconds of, you know, ritual utterance, 30 or 40 seconds of thought. And I saw him do that. And I almost have a trigger where I nod off after somebody answers a question with, that's a great question. You know, do they ever say, you know what? That's a very middling question. I mean,
yeah.
I expected a much better one, but it's not as bad as it could have.
That's a meandering, low-impact question for which I have a wholly unsatisfactory answer,
which really stirs no passion in me. So I could answer. I'm capable of it. I could even fake it, but why should I? Ask another one, okay? You know, I mean, that's we need dicks on TV. But anyway, what I want to say to that guy was, wow, okay. I guess Trump doesn't reach across the aisle like he used to. Remember that aisle, the 2 impeachment aisle that he used to have to try to reach across?
Maybe they're talking, I guess they're talking about bombing Syria. Maybe that's what they're talking about.
Yeah.
That was the only thing I can.
Well, I think he might have been trying to overcome the huge irony that the minority party has now shut down the government over an intransigent demand.
Right.
At the same time, it's calling for, you know, vast, sweeping party-style street fair style democracy.
Right. So yeah, and look, he's asking, well, how come the White House won't recognize the fact that millions of people are out in the street? Well, one of the reasons I would guess is because it's hardly clear that there were millions of people out in the street. Like,
I don't know that in Washington they had one of their stronger showings. I saw a lot of video of people on the mall in Washington, pointing behind them and not displaying, you know, a lot of grandeur as far as crowd size or passion or whatever. But like I say, you know, here I am in the woods, you know, practicing de-evolution, and I have to get it completely from media. And when I do, it's so dispersed in terms of the way it's discussed or talked about. And like the only picture I saw was that one from Boston over and over, which was almost a kind of a special effects style picture, because there was no individuality to the faces, because it was meant only to show the packed togetherness of the crowd.
Right.
And
Yeah.
And then you saw a lot of signs picked out by people who wanted you to, be rageful about, oh, here's a sign saying which heals faster, Trump's ear or Erica Kirk's heart.
That one was,
or one that, Free Luigi or whatever. And so everybody could find their own sign of interest or repulsion. And so the whole thing just like went poof, like a bunch of soap suds just dispersing into the atmosphere for me.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the significance of No Kings ultimately is. I think
it's a protest that was successful before it started, in the sense that there were no kings, and now there are still no kings. Is it supposed to serve as a warning, or is it supposed to serve as a rejection of a king already in place? Because Trump tweeted out a picture of himself with a crown, and somebody came back, presumably from the No King side, saying he's trying to bait us, he's mocking us. And I thought, wait a second, the presumption is that he is a king, and kings wear crowns. So are you saying that the idea of no kings is really an exaggeration, almost facetious, and him to portray himself as one is mockery?
Yeah. Can we see this? I think it's SOT 6. It's Trump responding to the protest. Here we go.
Protest over the weekend, the No Kings protests.
I think it's a joke. I looked at the people; they're not representative of this country. And I looked at all the brand new signs paid for. I guess it was paid for by Soros and other radical left lunatics. It looks like it was. We're checking it out. The demonstrations were very small, very ineffective, and the people were whacked out. When you look at those people, those are not representative of the people of our country.
Mr. President, besides San Francisco...
By the way, I'm not a king. I'm not a king. I work my ass off to make our country great. That's all it is. I'm not a king at all.
One thing about no, I mean, first of all, those people aren't representative of our country. Pardon me, President Trump, but everybody who ever told me to put a fucking mask on during COVID was at those things. I recognized the entire first generation of Rolling Stone readers out on the street. Almost all NPR listeners seemed to be there. They were representative of the part of the country that thought Joe Biden was doing a great job at the very least. And, they spread out from there. Now, I've made a lot of fun there of them, but, he has lost the baby boomer, white, educated NPR listener, if he cared at all.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's not what traditionally what a president would say. A traditional president would say, I represent all Americans, and of course, I want to listen to everything that everybody says. But Trump, that's not who he is. Like,
but that's also cant at this point to say.
Yeah, exactly.
For Trump to say I represent all Americans is really that would be to bait them. That would make them really angry. Not me. You don't. I mean. Everyone has made it quite clear that the Trump presidency is, confrontational, not just in its essence, but in all responses to it. That to cede the fact that Trump is even president is really what this is about. They're saying he's not.
Yeah,
they're saying he's something, but not a traditional president. Either seized power, or once he achieved it, by dubious means, he took too much of it. And it also suggests he's not going anywhere. And I would imagine it's almost irresistible to troll such people if you know in your heart that you are, or if you go every day to work and realize you have, like, I can't even keep the government open unless the other side wants. I'm a king.
Well, look, if you're Trump right now, he's got to be in Mr. Garrison mode from South Park. I mean, where he's back in the White House after having all of his funds seized, and he gets to go do all the dickish things that were done to him to other people, and he's going to enjoy every last bit of it, and he's going to do every TD dance imaginable, which is to be expected, I think. But
funded by Soros lunatics. You see, I know that Trump doesn't really believe any of this, if, as he proposes, he's a student of the art of war, because the art of war's first proviso is, know your enemy. And if he thinks they're all just crazy, I think he's underestimating himself. If he thinks that they are some phalanx of, I don't know, civil rights style or Vietnam War style protesters going to the very barricades to topple his government, I think he's also got it wrong. He's not suggesting that. It's somewhere in the middle. It does look a little like a street fair, honestly. It does seem a little like a place to meet your friends and, how can I put it? Be back in that safe space that they probably felt they were in permanently under Biden, or at least for a few years. It's hard to be a minority party full of advanced degrees, full of older folks who are affluent and so on. But I did not see in those protests, what I didn't see is what marks tide-turning protests of the past, those of my youth, in places like, the Mall for Martin Luther King, or down at the University of Minnesota during the Vietnam War, not far from my house, or whatever. And that was a convergence of passionate groups that were willing to go to great lengths and who you had a sense were more energized than the people in power.
And we're going to talk a little bit about what happened to that energy a little bit later when we get back to Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. But yeah, you're right. Then that's kind of what's absent from these protests. There's no urgency.
You didn't get that radical buzz off it.
Right.
For all the statements of uncouth and unsympathetic reactions to the assassination attempts, or the celebration of Luigi, or get ice off our backs, or whatever, you don't get the sense that any tear gas is going to be necessary at these things. Maybe Poland spring water for those who are especially exercised. And so with lacking that, I don't know what to think of this. It doesn't feel like the climax of anything. In some ways, it feels like the sort of I don't know, when packing peanuts get loose in your house out of a box, and they're everywhere, and you find them, but they're not. They're not
styrofoam peanuts. One of the great American things.
Right.
I hope they're American.
Right. In other words, it seemed to have static electricity, like a bunch of packing peanuts, rather than voltage, like.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's similar to when Trump first got elected, and they had the women's protests with the pussy hats and everything, and I remember at the time, I mean, I was, kind of deeply bummed out that Trump had gotten elected, but I couldn't really wrap my head around the idea of what exactly are they protesting already. You know what I mean? He hadn't done anything yet. The decision of the voters, and that's kind of what this has that same vibe. It's sort of a generalized, we don't like all of it. And I've been around a lot of lefty protests in the last 20 years, some more effective than others. I remember being with Cindy Sheehan and in Midland, Texas during the Iraq War. And that was more focused, even though they had trouble kind of getting the Free Mumia people to, kind of hold an Iraq war themed sign for a little while, right? But Occupy suffered from some of the same issues where it was a lot of people who felt the same way about about things, but there was no focused message. In fact, Occupy eventually settled on the idea that it shouldn't have a central message or it shouldn't ask for goals or demands because that was too constricting. And I don't know. I feel like, to me, it's a little bit of a different thing. As you say, it kind of takes some of the electricity out of the protest. But then again, what do I know? I only just woke up
from a concussion.
Yeah. So
I only woke up from a nap after pulling an all-nighter on my travelogue, my book that sums up America in 200 pages. So I'll say this lastly though about it. The joke was that that it was a boomer protest, that it was dominated by old people and white people and so on. And how would I know? I mean, now that the New York Times is doing quality tests on protests, maybe it can give us the percentages and the age and demographics. But it did have to me the feeling of an elegiac feeling, because it indisputably included a lot of people from all the earlier protests, or at least some of the very earlier protests that you mentioned. And you said, what are they protesting? And I think they're protesting their own diminution, their own passing from the scene, their own, they asked the kid, where is this one going? And because the kid isn't a smart aleck like me, he didn't say, assisted living. But that did have that feeling at times. You went, what is a protest of the old? I'm used to protests of the young. But what do the old demand?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. We do have some footage and some interviews of some folks from the Portland No Kings protest. Our own Ford Fisher, who, if you're familiar with the site, he's our he's the professional street action chronicler, and his whole thing is to get sort of long stretches of footage so that it's not cleverly edited. You can see what's going on. Let's take a look at SOT 5 and see what was going on in Portland.
No Trump, no KKK, no fascist USA. No Trump, no KKK, no fascist USA. No Trump, no KKK, no fascist USA. Fuck Donald Trump! Fuck Donald Trump! Fuck Donald Trump!
Back up. Don't take the bait! Don't take the bait! Say Charlie's name! Say Charlie's name! USA!
Is that a frog?
Apparently that frog is a big deal.
They're gonna happen to you! We're not biggest!
Guardians of pedophile.
I know, right? One day something's gonna happen to you. Oh, baby! Is that a threat? Is that a threat? Not a threat. Is that a threat, big man? You must be a he, right? I got a bigger dick than you could ever have, baby. Drink beer, Popeyes. Drink beer, Popeyes.
Well, so basically, that was just overflow for Americans to just get freaky with people they don't like. I mean, it being Portland, how can I put it? Portland is a permanent no kings protest in certain parts of it, just waiting, for the marching band. They had more rhythm. That looked more like a strike. That looked more, there were more chants. I could not tell at the end whether it was protesters and counter protesters. I knew they were facing,
yeah.
I knew they were facing off, but I couldn't tell which one was which, honestly. I was like, wait, is the left now the one that's obsessed with pedophilia? Because I realized that, everything is an Epstein distraction for them. So I was used to that being over on the sort of far right QAnon side, but maybe that has hopped the gap.
I feel like all of these things have overlapped now. Everybody is a pedophile. Everybody, yeah.
What did a red, white, and blue high-heeled shoes stepping on a heart signify?
I don't know, man. And I don't know. Maybe that's just because my brain's not working well enough yet. But
well, I've noticed you're not putting up comments as your wont.
That is true. You're right. I haven't been doing that.
But Tinte naked on the highway. That's nakedness at a protest is always welcome. But that frog character, apparently that's a new left-wing character that's been introduced, and I haven't decoded it yet.
Okay, can some of our followers tell us what the frog is all about?
It used to be Pepe. It used to be the allegedly.
Okay, so this is a take on Pepe.
Well, I don't know. I mean, all I know is that the way that you conquer another side is by taking their icons from their temple and putting them in yours.
Right.
So they took Epstein from the right-wing temple and put it over in theirs, or as an object, not of veneration, but of, disgust. And maybe they've taken Pepe the Frog, given him it looked like they'd given him a kind of Sesame Street makeover, made him more appealing to children. And now he preaches anti-royalism.
Okay. All right. Oh, yeah. No, maybe it's a
no.
No,
I don't think that guy hit it. This frog has a name. Like, in other words, I've seen it referred to. It's not Pepe. It's the something frog.
The something frog, huh?
Yeah.
Somebody's saying we're so bad at pretending. Pretending what? Pretending ignorance of all this?
Dude, what are we pretending? Dude,
yeah, exactly.
You know what we're bad at? Not pretending.
Right.
We're bad at being earnest. We've failed to do it so far in the show.
So, okay, one thing I can say about that footage, there are some general things that drive me nuts about protests. That if I see them in protests, I'm automatically not disposed to agree. So one of them is stilts, and another is whistles.
I think they could go back. I think those go back to the left-wing student protests in France of the late '60s, which were very big on. See, one of the problems with being my age is that you have seen everything happen 3 times by now. And street theater was something that was introduced in the late '60s as this very, impactful, as the little kids said on TV, form of protest. And that involved stilts. It involved mimes, and it involved, people with costumes where the head is way above their shoulders,
Right.
And you're absolutely right. The minute you see them, you don't need to know more. Just as any chant with the rhythm of ha 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 ho ha ha ho ha ho ho, is a left-wing protest.
Right.
Whereas any protest that goes la 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 is fascist.
I haven't seen enough of those, I guess. I'm so used to the this is what democracy looks like, that
right,
whole thing.
Exactly.
But
time I went on the writer's strike battle lines with AOC, and people won't believe that Walter Kern has a selfie with AOC at a strike, but I do. and they were wearing me down with those chants. And I was very involved in the cause. I wanted more money for screenwriters, but I was like, do I have to put up with this? Like, because these people, you come in and they're like kindergarten teachers who have like new methods. You know that they've been absolutely trained at some school and they've got to make people do it or they're not effective. And so I don't like the pros when they come in and try to shape the protest, you know.
Right. Yeah. I'm not a big fan of the pros. I'm not a big fan of the whole Marcel Marceau mime, stilt thing. I get it. I get it might have worked in the 60s, but we're past that now. I think we need a different vibe for those protests. And I remember this is going back decades now with American street protests. Like, we got to find a new, something new. Although I guess they're finding it in just outright violence now. So that's
But Matt, you're right when you said, well, I don't know what a fascist or a right-wing protest sounds like, because there are so few, and not in this country at least, and they're so few and far between that their cliches and tropes are hard to identify. The last real spate of them I remember was pre-COVID in other countries, like the Yellow Vests in France, or they've now had a few anti-immigration protests in England. But it has yet to come to America in any mass form, that kind of thing. They have rallies for their politicians, or for the late Charlie Kirk, or whatever it might be. But streaming through the streets is not something you see them do a lot.
Yeah, so here's Chad Eklund asking, seriously, how can you be this out of touch with what's going on? Walter's on a book deadline. I've literally been unconscious.
Well, I want to know what Chad means. Is he talking about No Kings, or is he talking about things generally? I have a sense that what he's implying is that we're out of touch with the drift toward monarchical crackdown and
that whole thing,
divine theological rule in America. And if he's suggesting that, he's just not a fan of the show.
So okay, so now let's move to I think that's a good point to move to a more serious subject
and prove him wrong.
Well, so John Bolton got indicted, and I think a lot of people initially dismissed the indictment as sort of a pure, politically inspired, tit for tat type of thing. But if you actually look at the indictment, it's not good for Bolton. This is a much more involved and specific case than even I thought at the time. And then lurking in the backdrop of Bolton, Comey is this sort of spiraling Arctic frost stuff that is coming out.
Remind everybody who's had a little time off here what Arctic frost.
So Arctic frost was the Jack Smith investigation into J6, and there was a sort of
that seemed to be almost cover for what it was, really. I mean, because it was actually the surveillance of a lot of Congress people too, right?
Well, right. What's come out now, and there's a widening story, and look, again, I'm just getting back into it, but well, obviously we spent the summer talking about document releases related to Russiagate. There was a lot of talk from the administration, sort of excitably from certain quarters, about how they were pushing through towards a big conspiracy against rights case, or a big conspiracy case that would basically target a lot of the Russiagate themed efforts to manipulate the intelligence community, the law enforcement system, to create phony investigations, that all that stuff. This new front involving the J6 investigation has added some fuel to that fire, from what I understand.
And what has been the headline revelation so far in this matter?
Well, the biggest thing has come from, I guess, from Grassley's office, and it's about 8 senators had their phone messages, their phone data tracked by the
8 U.S. senators.
8 U.S. senators, all Republicans. Then there were 92 different Republican organizations that were surveilled. Then there was another story that came out about how the J6 committee apparently turned over. What's the number? It's 30 million something. It's some enormous quantity of metadata involved.
Is it 30 million files or things pertaining
30
to
million lines of phone data in the J6 probe,
right.
which were sent by the J6 committee to the FBI. There's a FBI 302 about this, and this is going to become a story. It's lurking in the background. Everybody's trying to suggest that it's not a thing. It's a thing. And let's just take a look at one thing. This is Adam Kinzinger, who is complaining about the fact that John Solomon, who's been getting a lot of the stuff from the Justice Department, reported on the 30 million lines of phone data.
Makes us all less safe or something. Let's see.
Well, no, first he has to go into the whole John Solomon's not really a reporter thing, and then he's explaining why this isn't really concerning.
So today now I want to talk about John Solomon's latest, quote, scoop. His claim that he's uncovered some secret surveillance by the January 6th committee. Now, spoiler, this isn't new. It isn't a scandal. It's just another case of old facts that are being recycled for clicks and outrage. But we'll get to that. So first, to John Solomon. He is a thoroughly discredited, I guess I'll call him a reporter. He was fired from, get this, Fox News. Fired from Fox News for his role in spreading hoaxes. Now I want to get to this so-called scoop. So back in 2021, the January 6th committee subpoenaed phone companies for what's called metadata. So it's basic info. It's who called who, when, and how long. There's no recordings. It's not spying. It's not a wiretap or anything. It's just standard investigative practice that's been used in every serious investigation for decades. Again, it just is used to build who called who and then how long they talked. That's it. So it was covered at the time by the Washington Post, by CNN, by CBS, by Axios, actually by everyone. You can see some of those right now. Denver Riggleman, who worked for the committee, even went on 60 Minutes to explain how it all worked, and he wrote about it in his book. So this was public knowledge years ago. So fast forward to today. So Solomon pops up claiming that he discovered this thing and that I alerted the FBI to, and this is a quote, the mountainous collection of phone records. Wait, what? So this widely reported fact in 2021 was somehow just revealed to the FBI in late 2023? That doesn't make sense, of course, because it's insane. But what they're doing is implying that it somehow proves that members of Congress conspired with, by the way, Trump's FBI. He was president on January 6th.
Dude, Trump's FBI was the one that was trying to get him out of there.
January 6th. Or to spy on American citizens afterwards. It's ludicrous and it's fantasy. It's not wrong. It's actually just wrong. It's part of a pattern. And it's a dangerous lie. So this is how the right.
Okay, Matt, can we just stop for 1 second? You didn't go to public school. I did.
I went to a little bit of public school, but yeah.
was quite common in rural public schools that you needed a volleyball coach, but they also had to teach social studies. You know, they were recruited as a volleyball coach, but they also taught social studies. That's what Adam Kinzinger reminds me of. He reminds me of the volleyball coach who suddenly has to teach class. And I don't know who picked him out for that role, but what he said there was basically that some of the same facts were once represented this way, and now we're finding out more about them. But in some way, the guise in which they were first referenced is more important than this one, because it already happened. Whatever was said first must be the last word. Well, why does he care? You know, he's trying to show in advance this pattern of, I don't know, remixing old dough to try to, you know, create new bread. I think that would be reassuring to him. And also his comments about Solomon. I've met John Solomon. I don't know him. I'm not his friend. I've seen him speak and so on. He's a pretty sharp guy, a very sharp guy. And he runs a pretty sharp operation down there. And if he was steering people to John Solomon in the expectation that they were going to go, who is this nut? I think he probably wasn't doing his side a favor, because Solomon, if anything, maybe doesn't have an audience that he might, not being with a major network or so on. But he's not the clown that Kinzinger made him out to be. If that's the best they're going to do as far as a comeback against this, it's old news?
Well, so they're going to apparently. I mean, I haven't talked to a ton of people since I've been back yet, but this Arctic Frost stuff, which is basically a second front on the Russiagate investigation, because it's a continuation of the same concept. It's sort of a rolling political investigation that allowed a special prosecutor to conduct essentially political surveillance of a wide range of characters for a long time. And are all of
characters that included, this 10% of the U.S. Senate,
right? And yeah, exactly,
10% of the U.S. Senate. God knows how many other people, and the best they can do is shoot the messenger. The best they can do is John Solomon got fired from Fox. I mean, they're going to have to come up with a more sophisticated strategy going forward for this reason. J6 seems like a bad issue for Trump or for the right. But it's actually a very good issue for them, because it's one in which they feel their rights were vividly and up to imprisonment violated, and it gets them worked up. And just as it, with the same ferocity that the Democrats declared it, the near end of democracy, the right tends to see it as the time they almost put us in jail, tapped our phones, got us in trouble just for being in the Washington, D.C. area on a certain day, our capital, which we have every right to visit for any fucking reason we want to.
Right. Yeah. This ties into the Quiet Skies stuff, but go ahead.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is, on the assumption that there is new information or deeper information or broader information, simply making John Solomon the fall guy for reporting it, or saying like this is conventional investigative procedure, is to me a sign of weakness, because I don't think they can construe any of that as conventional.
Well, also, Kinzinger is going to have to. The argument is over whether or not there is an FBI document out there that says that Kinzinger came to them in 2023 with a whole bunch of information about phone metadata or phone data. Now, Solomon
Came to who? The investigators or the FBI?
to the FBI.
Okay.
So the Congress would have used its subpoena power, obtained a bunch of information, then gone to the FBI with this phone information. That's the theory that they're operating under. That's what Solomon's reporting, essentially, that there's an FBI document describing all of this.
So Kinzinger is personally in the crosshairs of this thing.
Yes, among other things,
Potentially.
he wasn't even in Congress at this point, right? So that's part of what makes this a little bit weird.
Where was he?
Yeah, I think he had already lost an election, hadn't he?
Okay.
Let me go back and look. I shouldn't talk out of school about this. I'm sorry, but anyway, this this thing is, I think, going to become. There are going to be a lot of questions asked. Let me get back to John Solomon for a second. I heard all the stories before I knew anything about John Solomon at the very beginning of Russiagate. I remember he was just constantly denigrated as some kind of arachnoid, like not even a real media creature. But if you go back and look, he broke most of the document-based stories with Russiagate, or he broke a sizable portion of them. Like a lot of the significant stories about, just to take a couple of examples, things like the various Crossfire investigations, right? Crossfire Dragon, Crossfire Hurricane, the informant reports that the FBI typed up that Trump, declassified out on his way out the door. Solomon put those out. There were other documents about Konstantin Kilimnik and his correspondence with State Department officials in the Ukraine embassy, right? In Kiev, right? So he has a very good record of producing documents. If you look at his site, Just the News, that's where you're going to find almost everything that was released over the summer. I mean, a few of us were following the story and got a few bits and bobs here and there, but the bulk of the really good stuff came out with him first. And
I know, as a comber of media, and as someone who's been covering Russiagate since long ago, almost from the moment it started, frankly, almost from the moment that they started whispering about Trump and the Russians. I mean, that if there was a rumor that something's coming, I'll probably see John Solomon report it first, second, or third.
Right. Especially if it's from DOJ, like that part of the universe. Right. He's got obviously very good sources over there, and so I think this story is going to turn in. This is a real thing, and there is once again kind of talk that it's not just going to be a couple of cases like Comey's perjury case or this Bolton case, which we should get to what the substance of that is, because it's kind of
the Bolton case.
Yeah, the Bolton case.
Pretty shocking.
It is shocking. Like I had no idea it was this stupid. But let's start by looking at Solomon.
You mean stupid in the sense of easy to get caught at?
Yeah, exactly.
As I've said before, I believe it still to this day. If I had done at the State Department what Hillary Clinton did, I'd be wearing an orange jumpsuit now.
Why is America so intent on bringing Julian Assange to unbelievably draconian justice of 175 years, i.e. the rest of his life in prison?
Well, I think that's a small amount of the sentence he actually deserves. He's committed clear criminal activity. He's no more a journalist than the chair I'm sitting on. The information that he divulged did, in fact, put many people in jeopardy. And when he gets to the United States, he'll get due process here. And I hope he gets at least 176 years in jail for what he did.
What was your reaction to learning about these secret plans being communicated in this Signal group chat?
Well, I was shocked, and I was without words, and I say that not because I'm more virtuous than anybody who was in that group. I just couldn't imagine it was happening.
We now
I
know
couldn't
that's
imagine
not true.
anybody would use Signal. Some of the guests
He
have
used
commented that
AOL.
Signal is highly encrypted.
I know.
I'll just
He
say
used
this:
AOL
if you think
according to the
Signal
indictment.
is equivalent to U.S. government secure telecommunications, think again. Well, I think this second example of a Signal chat group, and I have no doubt that there are more out there to be found, really shows a terrible lack of judgment. Communicating with the people in this group in particular who have absolutely no need to know about any upcoming U.S. military operation leads me to wonder what he's doing on the job on a minute-to-minute, hour-by-hour basis, that he's got time to knock out Signal messages to friends and family, which is what this group is.
Okay.
Dude, what? Like, Signal, though, it seems to me to be a complete facade of security. Like, is not exactly like Instagram. It's not like people are trading nude pictures. It's the most austere of the communication media for, semi-confidential conversation. Knocking out Signal. Like, what the fuck? It's like he's going to say, and they're using this new email thing I keep hearing about. Like, Signal is how you and I talk to sources.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's ridiculous. His comments about Assange are particularly ridiculous, and we'll get to that in a second. But if you look at the indictment, can we look at number 4? Because this one has the highlights. Just the first couple of notations tell you the extraordinary balls that Bolton must have had. Sort of the big picture of all this is that before Bolton even joined the Trump administration, he set up. Let's just read it. Hang on a second. Let's go to point 31. If we can find that one. Here we go. And can we blow it up? On or about April 8th, 2018, the day before Bolton officially began his duties as National Security Advisor, Individual 1 created a group chat with Bolton and Individual 2 on a non-governmental messaging application. Individual 2 asked the group, "Why are we using this now, the encryption?" To which Individual 1 responded, "Yup, why not?" Bolton then responded, "For diary in the future, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point." And then there's another section in the indictment. Can we find the part that starts, Bolton wrote many of these diary-like entries? Let's see. Here we go. So over the next 17 months, while he's the National Security Advisor to Trump, Bolton is sending basically diary entries through an encrypted chat group because he wants to write a book.
Sometimes he's using an unencrypted chat group, but on other occasions, Bolton used his personal non-governmental email accounts, such as email accounts hosted by AOL and Google to email information classified up to the top secret level to individuals wanted to at their personal email account.
And some of the examples that our own Greg Collard put together a timeline that's on Racket right now, and some of the things that are in. That were in that classified information, according to the indictment, are revelations of a, quote, liaison partner sharing sensitive information with the U.S. intelligence community, a foreign adversary's plan for a missile launch, and the sources and methods used to gain the intelligence, covert action planned by the U.S. and a covert action that was conducted by the U.S. in another country. So this is like, how many different stories is this now already? With
dude, imagine if they found this at Mar-a-Lago. You know what I mean?
Well, right.
Or anything close to it. Missile launches.
Yeah.
Okay. In what sort of book does future book does one imagine talking about missile launches and how we found out about things? To me, unfortunately, I remember when one of my rock heroes, Pete Townsend, was busted for child porn, and his his explanation was that he was just doing research for a book. That's the kind of book I feel we're talking about here. They all come out with them, but it is the all-purpose excuse usually for these, incidents. Wasn't it the excuse for Biden that he wanted it for his memoirs or something? That's why he had stuff in his garage.
Yeah, I mean that's always an excuse. There was another president who got caught with. I think it was, I can't even remember what party the person was from, but yeah, memoirs is a common excuse. But the point is, we've now had a not insignificant number of pretty senior national security officials or cabinet officials who've been essentially CCing themselves with every sexy document they get that comes across their desk for whatever purpose, whatever private purposes
But Matt, I mean, we must presume, as all people who are counterintelligence experts do, not that I'm one, but all the people who look at this John Bolton case are, and say, are they selling any of them? Are they trading any of them? Are they using any of them to curry favor? Are they using any of them for future blackmail purposes, perhaps, or future leverage in gaining another job in a different administration? These are trading cards in Washington, inside of Washington, certainly, sometimes around the world. And it is to be presumed that that's how they're used, not that they're memoir material. Come on, you catch an Army officer on a base, throwing something into the back of his car from a locked building that he has access to, and nobody presumes that he's writing a memoir.
Of course. I'm just saying, even if he was writing a memoir, it's nuts and criminal and outrageous that he would say all that other stuff. Like, I can't even imagine doing that. This is a guy who's been, stuffing, according to again, we have to remember, indictments are accusations. Sure. And they have to make a show of proof, right? So, but one assumes that they're not going to go forward with something like that unless they have. This is unlike, for instance, the case that involved the GRU officers, where there wasn't an expectation that someone was going to show up and contest the evidence or ask for discovery. Here, we're going to find out pretty quickly whether they actually have the goods or not on this.
But that's crazy. Yeah. Everybody who is unlike me, experienced in government, been there, been in the military, been around Washington for a long time, tells me when I bring this stuff up, that what's really being exposed is the horrors of business as usual. In other words, like, you ain't nobody unless you got at least one hefty cinch sack of like missile plans in your fucking basement. Are you even in the game? And so I'm told that, the shock that you and I might feel, or maybe you don't as much as me, or it is really hardly warranted, except in the sense that this is much more common than we know. This is kind of standard operating procedure among some. And while you were out with your concussion, there was another spy case that made the news of a Carnegie Endowment for Peace bigwig with an endowed chair there who had been on Bush's National Security Council, who, had been caught, having meetings in restaurants with Chinese officials and had been under investigation for 3 years and literally had garbage bags of classified documents in his home, it was alleged. And this was a very smooth character, the kind of person, who goes to like black tie dinners and sits on awards committees and that kind of thing. So between the two data points, him and Bolton, it's easy to think that the deep state is just going, hey, we're just deep stating along, man. What the hell?
That's exactly right. This is the consistent answer we're getting from all these folks about, James Comey talking about, when we get court-ordered FISA surveillance on figures in the Trump campaign during the presidential election, I don't consider that spying. Or when I send informants into a presidential campaign, I don't think of that as spying. That right? I mean, that's one of the things he said, and it's similar to this stuff. They don't.
This is mishandling. This is just handling.
I mean, we heard Kinzinger say like, "This isn't spying. We're just sending 30 million lines worth of phone information."
We do that every. We do that every time an ambassador is mugged in the streets of Washington, D.C. What are you talking about?
And I think you're right. I think underneath all this, we're going to get, because one of the things that was difficult for me to wrap my head around in the early parts of the Russiagate stuff was, how come there isn't more shock even on the Republican side about this? Like, in other words, you have a presidential campaign going on. You got FBI informants in there. You got the use of FISA on a political campaign. Like, this seems like a 10-alarm fire politically, and there's kind of a lot of shrugging going on.
But see, Matt, I was told recently by a journalist I work with closely and who I really trust and who's very intelligent and, comes from a kind of State Department background, not personally, but family wise, somebody who has multi-generational knowledge of how Washington works. I was told that, and not Tucker Carlson, that he had gotten the entire Russiagate plan described to him in detail before Trump was elected.
So the whole plan about how to
and it's come out that it seems that elements of it were definitely hatched before he was elected. But this guy said, like, a person who became a high Biden administration official simply sat him down and laid it out for him way back when. And I thought, well, okay, if this is true, assuming this is true, and it's not getting caught that they're worried about. It's getting prosecuted. They don't worry about getting caught because, in a weird way, they're sitting at dinner talking about it and trading it and, dining out on it. The real breach of decorum is to, as they say, selectively prosecute it.
Selectively, yeah.
And indeed, they're probably right. It is selective because it's something short of universal, which would seem to be warranted by actual behavior.
Right. And I think from the perspective of people in Washington, I almost understand their outrage at the continued focus on all this. Like, what do you expect? We've been doing this our whole lives. But honestly, like, this has got to stop at some point. You just can't let this go on forever.
One thing is, one of the things I think that fueled Russiagate from the side of, the Clinton campaign and Comey and that apparent contingent was the belief that if Trump's coming to town, there must be endless stuff on him.
Right.
If we go into Mar-a-Lago, there must be endless stuff there because we got it in our house.
Yeah, everybody's got it. So it must be there. Another sort of amazing sideshow to this, the New York Times ran a story by Devlin Barrett. Can we look at number 7? This is case against Bolton raises questions over Justice Department's use of Espionage Act. The allegations in his case are a pointed example of when classified information tumbles into non-secure places, either by accident or from recklessness by someone trusted to keep it safe. And then it's the indictment of John R. Bolton highlights what national security experts say is the inherent danger of using everyday messaging systems to share government secrets, and raises questions about whether the Trump administration is applying the Espionage Act fairly. So the thesis of this article is going to be that it's way too easy to indict somebody under the Espionage Act because almost anything is a violation of the Espionage Act. It doesn't even have to be classified information. It could be national defense information. And the penalties are too enormous. And so essentially it's an article complaining about the Trump administration's misuse of the statute to target somebody like John Bolton, when it's really more appropriately used for somebody like Julian Assange, right? Like, I mean, it's unbelievable that they wrote this article. I mean, when the Assange indictment came down, and remember, I think it was 18 of the charges were Espionage Act related, 18 or 19. I can't remember how many it was, but they were all, either conspiracy to obtain national defense information or obtaining national defense information. It was just, essentially, it was having access to things that the government has designated to be beyond your ken, right? Not even technically classified, for instance. And so here we now have, even though that law has been in existence forever, it's over a century old, right? Like, and it's been used against, the Obama administration. I think used it 8 times in press cases. It was used in the Pentagon Papers case. It's a catch-all.
It's designed for selective prosecution.
It's designed for selective prosecution.
Or at least recently. I also love the idea that old laws are somehow less, have less stature. No, the reason the Espionage Act is 100 years old is that espionage is 10,000 years old. I mean, like if you're going to form a nation, one of the first things you do is start making laws about spying on it or stealing its secrets. Can we go up to the headline graph though?
Yeah.
Because Walter may not, as our viewer pointed out, be informed enough about events, but he is deeply informed about language since he's writing a novel. And there's a verb in that subheading that I would never have thought to use in this case.
Tumbles?
Yes. The example of when classified information tumbles into non-secure places. Like, what does that conjure up? Like that breezes can blow, and like those fabled weeds of the Westerns, a tumbleweed can just blow into an open public square from, let's say, a bank vault, and
or kids tumbling out of a romper room playground thing. I don't know. It's a ridiculous metaphor, right? Like
one secret of writing fiction or drama particularly is that you always show in the beginning, before people are watchful, what you want them to think in the end. And what they're doing here is they're writing a long footnote to tumbles. Tumbles is the idea that they want to get across, that classified information kind of has a life of its own. Once it's out there, it's a little like dust, tumbleweed, rocks. Yeah, and there's just a natural process by which it tends to roll like a child's beach ball washing out to sea, or something, a toy, a slinky going down the steps. And that's all they want us to think. And of course, it would be unfair to blame a particular person for a essentially meteorological event,
Well, exactly that, and that's why the Espionage Act is so insane, especially since the penalties are so extreme. I mean, I think it's 5 years a count or something like that, right? It's some, as you heard him in that video, when he was presented with the idea that Assange might do 170 years for, and Bolton's like, well, that's not enough,
Dude, there should have been blood dripping from his fangs in those interviews, because what he was saying without saying is that we should chop this guy's head off.
Right, and I remember when that indictment, when the Assange indictment came out, reading it and thinking, this is basically like every national security reporter in the country commits at least this much Espionage Act crime every single day, right? Because whether you are accidentally hearing something that you're not supposed to, or whether you're getting information that one senior employee would designate as being, not fit for the public to hear, or whatever it is, like you can't know ahead of time what your sources are going to tell you or not tell you, or what they're going to hint at, or what your information in combination with some other information is going to lead to. Like, there's no way to do the job if obtaining national defense information becomes a felony that you can spend the rest of your life in jail for. Like, it basically made reporting illegal.
Right.
But that was no problem. It's only a problem when John Bolton might go to jail, right?
It's not a problem when the FBI enters the former president's, home, and then releases pictures of it. It's not a problem when they're going into every phone record of everybody who was in the Washington area on January 6th. In other words, scrutiny is only a problem when the scrutinized have power. But the scrutiny of the powerless is just regular investigative technique. And the fact is, Matt, you and I both know as journalists who get information that sometimes the person is passing us at risk, or in contravention of maybe agreements they've made or whatever.
Absolutely, yeah.
That like, there are times I've wanted to say, hey, stop, okay? Stop and consider whether wherever I think you're going is a place you want to go, because we might have consequences. That shows that I'm aware as a reporter, even, and I'm sure you are, because you delve much more deeply into these areas, of all the possibilities. Even though on the reporter side, they're rarely come to much, on the journalistic side. Everybody, whether it's common or not, they're all exquisitely aware of what's possible.
Well, and that's why the Assange moment was so revolutionary, is because the implicit understanding previously was always that your sources can take whatever risks they want, right? Usually they do it knowing what the risks are, right? They know they can go to jail for the rest of their lives. Right. And the deal always was previously that as long as they were willing to take those risks, you as a journalist, you're all right. Like, you can do the story. But what the WikiLeaks case did, what the Assange case established, and there were a bunch of others that Espionage Act cases that ran up beforehand, But the Assange case firmly established now that that's no longer true. It's not just about the source taking the risk. Now you're taking the risk. And it's not even whether you publish it or not. You can just hear it, and that's enough, right? So the fact that they've had this tool in their tool bag for so long, and that and they never saw a problem with it previously, but now it must be a huge injustice to see it turned on, the likes of a former national security advisor like John Bolton. Like, I'm sorry, I have a very difficult time working up any feelings of sorrow in this case. So
there's never, maybe in the history of mankind, been a less sympathetic character once you get to know him than John Bolton, I would assert. The man behind the curtain, the man who goes to sleep at night like watching bombs drop on rebel forces on his phone and saying, "Hey honey, look at this." Now he's crying. Now he can't take it. But why is the New York Times crying for him? Just because it's Trump that's prosecuting him? Why is the New York Times suddenly inhibiting its own future of getting after Trump in 2029 or something by planting their flag on John Bolton's mustache?
Yeah, and they're doing that before they know what the entire picture is behind the Bolton case, and
unless he's one of their biggest sources, and this is only what they do for their biggest sources.
Anyway, crazy stuff. And I will say, having after my little Rip Van Winkle thing, I think the one thing that stands out looking back at the news is that this is going to be a thing. This Bolton / Arctic Frost / Comey stuff is real. It's gaining momentum. We'll see where it goes.
And it also promises, because we now have some different nodes that we can see, it promises to connect things that maybe we don't expect to see connected.
Right.
I guess that's my last word on it.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that's true. Finding out is always better than not finding out, right? So, we spent a little bit of time last time we did a show picking on Hasan Piker, about whom we knew not that much, or I didn't know very much, and he had a little bit of a secondary flip out. I guess he declared himself black-pilled.
Can we contextualize this just slightly, Matt? Yeah. Matt and I showed the video of him allegedly using a shock collar on his dog during one of his 4.5 hour, Castro-esque marathon podcasts. The dog got up off the ground, and supposedly, it seems, what you see him do is activate a shock collar and they go, "Oh!" The dog, and then the dog lays down. And then he does this weird ass covering thing where he says, "My mom's been spoiling the dog." And he justifies to the audience what the horrifying thing that they've just seen. After which I launched into, because I don't get the podcast for 4 hours, I'm frustrated. I talk fast and floridly. I said, Hasan Piker looks to me like a sociopath. Like, underneath what I just saw, I sense a very cold and empty soul. So I said that. Somebody took the transcript of that and turned it into a tweet, Matt. It was like 500 words.
I saw that. Yeah.
And the damn thing went viral. Just my floating thoughts on Hasan Piker, a guy that neither of us knew except for when we'd made fun of a New York Times style piece about how he was.
Oh yeah, he was going to be the new Joe Rogan, except
he wears lipstick,
pansexual or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyway, I said that. I could easily have repented, thinking I went too hard on him. But lo and behold, he has delivered me satisfaction beyond what any podcasting ranter like me could ever hope.
Well, could we start, Mr. Producer, with his crash out video, where he Was this in response to your tweet?
I'd
This
like
thing?
to think so, but I
Yeah.
don't think it was. But
Okay.
I can't stand any of you dumb fucks in this goddamn chat. Oh my fucking God, I hate the left. I hate liberalism. I hate everything that's going on every single fucking day of the goddamn week. I hate my life. I hate fucking streaming. I hate socialism. I hate every single fucking person who thinks that the peak of activism is just being the most annoying, holier than thou, the most ultimately woke leftist. You did it. You did it. You have unlocked the fucking nihilism within me, okay? I am black-pilled. Nothing will ever get better. We are never going to make it out. We can't even have a normal fucking non-hostile goddamn conversation on any of these issues. Everybody just simply wants to fucking chirp into the wind because they have no power and they recognize their utter powerlessness in the face of unjustifiable constructs that we fucking exist under. And the best possible fucking thing you can do is just be goddamn annoying, okay?
Dude, did you speed that up or was that his natural speed?
Oh, God.
No, he's still going, man. That's just the beginning of. But so
there's the dog. This dog lies in exactly the same position in the shot, never moving.
Dog's never moving again. Yeah.
I don't think that has a shot collar. I think it might have a sedation dart in it. However.
Yeah, it has embalming fluid inside of it. So our own Greg Collard went through and made a little bit of a collage of Hassan's greatest hits. And it's kind of amusing. Let's take a look.
This is so insane. America deserved 9/11, dude. Fuck it. I'm saying it.
We're there to partner with them. We're not there doing our own thing. We're there partnering and training
In a video
and
game.
equipping and enhancing their capabilities. So that's part of what we're doing. And the other part is just knowledge. We want to know what's happening.
Like we fucking totally brought it on ourselves, dude. Holy shit. We did. We fucking did.
Oh my God. Well, Hezbollah is a terrorist organization. Dog, if Hezbollah is a terrorist organization, America is the top terrorist organization, which it is, by the way. America is the top dog in terrorism. No, Hamas, unironically, is the lesser evil of the two. If you look at the civilian casualties, if you look at the civilian deaths versus the deaths of soldiers, Hamas's percentages are infinitely better than Israel. That's just fact.
Streaming this?
Yeah. Yeah. They're flexing.
What? And they're coming in hot with guns.
Yeah, but you have to understand this is a deterrent, right? So like their goal is to film it and show it to the world. So like other companies that don't want to risk having this happen to their product, having this happen to their ships, literally are like, okay, we're not going to use the trade route anymore. All of a sudden, if you don't use the trade route, trade gets more expensive for the West. All of a sudden, if you can't use that trade route, the Israeli port is going to get bankrupt.
People that they can afford housing in Berkeley. I don't know how that works.
My understanding is that the property owners who have properties there choose just not to rent it at all.
Yeah, kill them. Kill those motherfuckers and murder those motherfuckers in the street. Let the streets soak in their fucking red capitalist bloods, dude.
Left wingers, liberals.
He hates socialists. He hates capitalists. He hates liberals. He hates everybody. Matt, the essence of my tweet was I said, like, quote unquote, that inside him is a howling Arctic wasteland of nothingness. And and now he's come out and fucking admitted it.
I know. Yeah, you've awakened the nihilist whatever in me. It's
what are you gonna do? Go kidnap the Big Lebowski? I mean, the nihilist. His shtick is really interesting to me. First of all, he's very insecure about his hair. I saw like 5 different attempts to like do like curly bangs and things that usually bespeak hair plugs, frankly. For a guy who's supposedly a pansexual, liberator of everybody else's repressed libidos, he's really worried about his hair. And
I can't pick on that. I'm a bald guy, so what can I?
Yeah, but Matt, you solved the problem. See, Hassan could solve it by shaving his head. Instead, he shows us every week how worried he is about his little front curls. I've solved the problem by not ever fucking combing it, so we're equal. But he went from like motor mouth, like high Adderall, I thought double speed talk, to just like kind of like, sorry, somewhat concussed, slow, hey man. And he goes all over the place. His basic message seems to be just kill them. Like if they annoy you, kill them. And you're justified because that's all we do. We just kill people, which it, more sensitively and articulately put is a position. But it's just so all over the place that you can't believe the Times like bought into this guy with that full color feature, nor can you believe he has incredible numbers supposedly as a podcaster.
Yeah, he's like evil PewDiePie or something like that, right? Like PewDiePie is like the world's most influential media figure. He's like a guy who plays video games and kids love him.
Right.
And even I like him, right? This is like the opposite. He's just somebody who spews stuff.
He's a pure podcaster in the sense that I can't believe anybody listens to him for information. They only listen to him to have like a sort of like percussion section of really fast talk, really slow talk, really mean talk, and really, ultimate threatening talk.
You brought up a good point last time we talked about him, about how prominently all the different products are placed in his set, even though it's it would seem to be the same set every time. It's not. I out of curiosity, I had a couple of different AI programs analyze and try to identify the products in each one of in certain shots, and it's hilarious. Like the things that they found: green elevated dog beds similar to those made by K&H Pet Products or Coolaroo, Funko Pop figures possible based on the boxy figurines visible on the shelves, basketballs from major brands like Spalding or Wilson, a helmet or mask resembling something from Marvel or sci-fi franchises, Pac-Man plush figure, Lego style figures or collectibles. It just goes on and on.
So the dude who hates capitalism is one big product placement smuggler. Dude, I feel bad when I lift a can and it's Coca-Cola.
Yeah, that's why we use cups instead of Coke cans.
Right.
But anyway, I highly recommend if you're very bored, the AI analyses of the Piker shows are kind of funny, but they're getting kind of intense at this point.
But for all his extreme and lethal and Bolshevik or whatever style rhetoric, this is a man who fusses with his background, who fusses with his bangs, who fusses with his sleeveless t-shirts. Does this expose enough of that tattoo? Who probably should fuss with a tanning booth if he's going to wear sleeveless shirts as much as he does. And the idea that this guy is some, secure in himself vanguard figure is just so funny. I can't believe it. It's like I'm sorry, but like Richard Simmons was a far more hard charging, just be himself kind of guy than Hassan Piker,
Totally. This is like, it's like a combination. It's metrosexuality meets I don't know, Navy SEAL or something. I don't know. It's a weird vibe I get from him. But interesting to watch. Always fun to see people disintegrate on the internet. That's what it's for. So felt we had to follow up on that since
you're right. That was the Howard Beale speech.
Right.
I hate socialist. I mean, he literally, there might be method to Hassan Piker's apparent madness, because that was the Howard Beale breakdown where he goes, I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. I don't care if you're this or that. Like, I'm just pissed off. and it's
That's right.
capitalism and it's socialism and get out there. And he's just Howard Beale with like bangs.
Well, no, it's inverted Howard Beale, because Howard Beale was the
Expansive.
everyman, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and he was trying to appeal to everybody's
Right.
Sort of frustrations. Whereas Hassan Piker's thing is it's a diatribe about all the things that make him personally upset,
Right.
as opposed to all the other lesser folks.
He's the Superman, tired of being down here among the Nietzschean bug men who just bug him. But Matt, as the podcasting space matures and as it becomes harder and harder to gain and hold an audience, I hope we see some like real like sudden conversions. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
Sam Harris coming on and saying, "Today I broadcast from my Lord Jesus Christ." That's right. It's Sam Harris, former atheist and Buddhist. But last night I saw the Lord, and this is going to be a Christian show from now on. Like, I want to see more of that.
I mean, aren't we already seeing this? Isn't Russell sort of doing that already?
Well, he didn't do it during the podcasting curve.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I want to see people just like reverse course mid-show, like Joe Rogan hear an answer and go, "This whole UFO thing is fucked up. There are no other beings. The world is simple. Science rules. We don't have to look into anything any further than this. The government tells the truth. Of course they do."
Right. Yeah, that's what it would be. It would be somebody telling us to just believe everything we hear, right?
It's a little like when Howard Stern went saintly on, got religion against Trump and was suddenly like the voice of American democracy.
Yeah. Well, we're not quite there yet. We'll probably get to mass religious conversion sooner or later. But that
Or Hunter Thompson saying, "Don't do drugs, kids."
Well, I was just gonna say that's a perfect lead into the ending of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And as much as I love this book, the ending has always bummed me out a little bit. Okay, well, should we just sort of sum up for people what happens in the end, or
well, why don't you sum it up, Matt? Since I finished the book 2 weeks ago, right before your concussion, and I'm like, okay.
Well, essentially, what happens is that a lot of their energy, they get all stoked to do this, to cover this district attorney's convention. Thompson and his attorney, and we have an actual picture. I think it appeared in Spy at one point. It was in Rolling Stone for sure. This picture of Hunter and Acosta in Las Vegas during this time period. One exists, which we'll show at some point. But
I love that photo, Matt. Somebody used AI to put our faces on that once. Remember?
Did they really?
Yeah, the one at the table.
Oh yeah. That's right. Yeah, there it is. There's Hunter and Acosta, and and you can. There's even a scene in the book that you can tell. There's a line about what kind of a maniac wears one black glove. This kind of came up in an ironic way when Michael Jackson became famous again. Became famous because he used to wear the one black glove. But this is actually what they look like during the Vegas sojourn.
Matt,
Mhm.
can you pose like Hunter and I'll pose like Acosta? Okay, right. So there is a resemblance.
Yeah, a little bit.
He's got a hat on. No, Hunter's got a hat on in that one.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But I can't do the Hunter voice. Have you tried it? It's really hard.
No, I revere him too much to try to imitate him in any way. Every time I catch myself trying to be Gonzo in a piece, I go like, "Don't touch it, dude."
I know. It's an affectation. Every young sort of journalist, well, for a while anyway, they went through that phase of using, Thompson-esque words. "Goddamned" is one that you have to watch out for, right?
What they look like here is the two hardest living chess players in history.
But everything goes wrong for them at this at this district attorney's convention, and the end of the book kind of turns out to be a colossal bummer. Like they were so up, and it's like every drug high. You are so up in the beginning, you just can't wait to go charging into whatever happens, but it always ends in a dark place in a room where you're just trying to mellow out and find something on TV that doesn't scare you or whatever it is. And that's kind of what happens in this book. Like they have one last moment where something funny happens. A maid walks in on the attorney naked and vomiting into the toilet, and they pretend to recruit her as an informant for the narc squad or something like that, and they give her the password, like if somebody says to you, "One hand washes the other," you just respond, "I fear nothing," right? And it's a very funny scene, but the rest of it is just it's a long series of essays not a long series of essays. It's a series of essays by Thompson on his way out of town about how just things aren't the same anymore, about how the energy from the 60s is gone, and he's lost, right?
It's another tequila sunrise,
right? Exactly.
Or in the vein of Peter Fonda in Easy Rider, we blew it, man. We blew it.
That's right. Yeah, and he has a great line about why had they done so many things? Like, first, we've already talked about the Neutrogena soap bars.
I love that because everybody who ever first saw Neutrogena soap as an adult wanted to steal it, and they steal the most of it.
They just fill a whole back seat of a gigantic convertible with it. But then he goes and he lists all the other stuff that's in the wreckage of one of the rooms that they stay in. What kind of addict would need all these coconut husks and crushed honeydew rinds? Would the presence of junkies account for all these uneaten French fries, these puddles of glazed ketchup on the bureau? Maybe so, but why all this booze and these crude pornographic photos ripped out of pulp magazines, like Whores of Sweden and Orgies in the Casbah that were plastered on the broken mirror with smears of mustard that had dried to a hard yellow crust? And all these signs of violence, these strange red and blue bulbs and shards of broken glass embedded in the wall plaster because they had bought Christmas lights for some reason. Like, there's all these things that happen in between the scenes that they only mention in passing.
But that's an interesting point, and that's I think important point about Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, is that the only part that it inevitably doesn't include, but does include spiritually, are the blackouts. And you get the feeling toward the end of the book that he's started to catch up with his blackouts. And that is the sadness of it. He looks around, time has passed, events have occurred that he has no memory of, pleasures have been enjoyed that he can't remember being pleasures. And that is his final metaphor for the last decade or whatever period in America, that suddenly we look around and we see the wrappers, we see the spilled things, we see the party favors, and nothing's sadder than the room where a party was that you can't remember.
Yeah, and it's really a metaphor for the whole 60s, right? Like,
yes,
it's a great thing. It's an energizing thing to have this feeling of living like there's no tomorrow. But the problem is there is a tomorrow, right? Like, ultimately, you either end up dead or you wake up and you're just, you know, old and have bills and ex-wives, and that's kind of what's happening in this book, is that he's waking up after all the madness, and it's just a bunch of wreckage that doesn't mean anything, and nothing got fixed. And he's not sure that anything was accomplished other than a monumental sort of orgy of consumption, which is extremely funny in itself. It's worth it, right?
Well, it's sad that Hunter wasn't around to collect a production credit on the most obvious ripoff of this book, which is The Hangover, the movie.
Oh yeah, of course.
You know, and my brilliant, I thought, contention about the book, because I try to think of something new to say about, especially about books that people think they have completely digested, is that this is, on this reading, for me, a book about materialism, about consumerism, about just putting stuff in you and using stuff. Because remember, it's all about Cadillacs of different colors. It's about, brands.
Oh yeah, the
brands
Mercedes,
of alcohol.
yeah, exactly.
Neutrogena soap. I mean, the reason that sticks with me is because it's an image of, like, consumerist lust run amok. Look, there's clear soap that looks like it's made of honey. Let's get hundreds of bars of it and put them in our Cadillac, while taking all these drugs. In the future, all these drugs that Hunter took will have brand names and be produced by Pfizer under special,
right,
conditions that say we've removed the molecules. I mean, pot or weed already has got brand consciousness, but legal pot, I mean. But in those days, just because his pot and his LSD and his this or that doesn't have a corporate mark on it, it's still consumerism in a way.
Yeah.
And to me, that is what the book is finally protesting, celebrating, indulging in, and finally skeptically mourning and casting feelings of desperate horror toward. Like, what is this wreckage and this vanity of vanities, like the Ecclesiastes preacher in the Bible, I've been up, I've been down, I did this. There's a time to eat, there's a time to drink, there's a time to celebrate, but now it's all over.
But in the end, it's so worth it. Like the journey is so much fun, and like I always compare this book and Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail, which is it's much more of a journalism book. It's not nearly as fun as this one or as taut, right? But to me they're similar to books like The Trial or The Castle, where there's a Kafka's narrators are these hyper energetic clownish figures who are in search of something, never find it, and always choose the wrong door to open, never get where they want to go, and end up failing. But the story is kind of worth it in the end. It's the journey that matters, right? In both the Kafka story and in the Thompson stories, and this is the ultimate salute to, like, American consumerism and to everything that's available to do in this as a consumer. Drive fast cars, do drugs, women, wreck hotel rooms, run up credit, all that stuff. They do it to the max. They have a great time, or they sometimes have a great time, and it's written up gorgeously. Does it mean anything in the end? No, not really, but it's still worth it. It's still beautiful.
Another great job for AI would be to recreate that hotel room from the scene as he describes it. Yeah, in general, I'd like to see AI do that every once in a while, because there's sometimes a page in a book that I'd like to see come to life. But you know what? I just reflected on something. You know, something that Hunter Thompson curiously was not often accused of being? A conspiracy theorist.
Oh, yeah.
And yet he was one of the most paranoid beings who ever lived. His paranoia is all over this book. I mean, there's a reason he uses the term fear and loathing. That is paranoia. I'm afraid something horrible is going to happen. And yet, by putting all his paranoia up front in his reportage, in his literature, he actually made us think that he was a shrewd realist underneath, which he kind of was about politics. Like, whenever you would read him in a straight political analysis of a convention or something, you were like, this guy knows how the world works. But oddly, like I say, it's the people who look straight who get accused of conspiracy theorizing. Hunter was actually, I think, a suspected normie underneath, or a suspected guy who wanted a suspected patriot.
Yeah, and you believed him. He didn't put on an act in his narration. He wasn't pretending to be anyone. That's why his books were so accessible to so many different types of people. In the same way the Twain's books are.
But he was a moralist about politics and politicians.
He absolutely was, but there are even a lot of conservatives and right wingers enjoyed his books even during that time period, right? Because he made so much fun of himself, in addition to making fun of Nixon. But and by the way, he also gave it to the Democrats very hard during that time period. I mean, like, some of the people who came out the worst in his writing were people like Ed Muskie, right, or John Lindsay, or who's the other one I'm thinking of from Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail? Hubert Humphrey. Yeah, who
the Happy Warrior
rolled, and he rolled and crawled through a plate glass window. I forget what the line was, but Hunter was so open, and he was so good at disclosing his own vulnerabilities on the page and everything that it's just touching the way that this middle-aged person. By the way, this is also a book about middle age. It's clearly that too, right? Because he's no longer young, right?
How old is he?
I mean, he's what, mid-30s here, mid to late 30s, I guess, right? No, but he's no longer no longer like Woodstock young. You know what I mean? Right, he's not. Right. He's a 6'5" bald guy who's got very serious health issues, and it's not the beginning of the run for him. The hill is starting to turn downward for him. And how does he handle it? He handles it by going all out, you know what I mean? Which is kind of the perfect way to do it, I think. And I don't know. I love this book. I just have nothing but affection for the way this book was written. And also I'm curious to know, and we only have a few minutes, but how do you characterize this book? As fiction, nonfiction? Like what is it for you?
In any real practical sense, it's fiction, okay? Because if indeed he's as wasted as he describes, he would have had to recreate most of these scenes. You know what I mean? not only that, I happen to know, because I sort of looked into it, that this book, collapses a lot of things that maybe happened in Las Vegas or maybe not in Las Vegas into one narrative. So it's fiction, but it's fiction from a guy who had decided not to be a novelist pretty early in his career, right? I mean, didn't he write a novel right at the beginning?
Rum Diary or
yeah, I think so.
Mm.
And who decided that events were so weird and that American reality was so surreal in itself that he, the distinction had collapsed. Why should he obey it? But it's fiction. It's fiction starring a real person, their real mind, their real sensibility, and probably 80% of events that you couldn't make up, The reason that there is a lot of nonfiction, as Mark Twain said, the problem with fiction is it has to be plausible.
Right.
And the ironies of getting to Las Vegas on wasted to find out you're at a district attorney's conference or whatever, all those things are too good to be true. But the way I would finally classify the book is as it's not really a memoir, because it's not full enough and full of context, and it's about a spree. Memoirs attempt to sort of account for how you got where you are and show all the stages. It is a cautionary tale. It's like the books that they used to write back in Europe before we had novels and so on, that would talk about some horrible thing that happened to make children not want to do it, or secretly would make them want to do it. Thank you, Christopher. I hope you're like a very educated person, because you agreeing with me makes me feel good. And I like to think that's the result of study. It's a cautionary tale. It's almost a religious tract in the sense that it's about going too far, or it's Dante. It's a trip to hell. It's an account of a trip to hell. In classical literary terms, you call these books trips to the underworld, and they always follow the same pattern. Here I am going into the underworld. The acid was hitting outside of Barstow. Here I am deep in the underworld, and here I come out onto the surface, having fought the devils and maybe lost a little bit to them, but I'm back with mankind. So it's a trip to the underworld. It's a cautionary tale. It's a modern folk tale.
Yeah, it's Perseus or Theseus or whatever it is, but just the American version in a convertible, high on every conceivable drug, descending into the very maw of hell with every narc in the country, blasted out of your mind. Committing felonies left and right, getting away with it, and then somehow returning back to the surface to report to the world. A little bit diminished, but it's
like Virgil, like the Aeneid, like Dante, or Virgil, who's Dante's guide in the Inferno. And all these books have one thing in common. They're about being grateful you're still alive. And frankly, I think Hunter Thompson must have woken up many a morning, surprised and grateful that he was still alive.
Absolutely. And there were one of the viewers was just asking, saying something about how he didn't have health problems until he was later. No, he writes constantly, even when he was younger, about how he went to doctors and they told him, hey, when you stop sweating this much, then come to me, right? Like
that's in the book, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, his drug intake was so awesome, and I think we both have friends who knew him during periods when he was having trouble getting from place to place and doing certain things. This was a person with a deeply serious habit, but I just think that this book is like the ultimate example. Like every writer, some of them can turn it on every single time. Some of them only hit strike gold once, like to me, Catch-22 was just an example of a writer who just got hot and, on a heater and just kept going, right?
And who I think, in Heller's case, spent the rest of his career baffled about how he did it.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But this is the one where a guy who was great, normally, right? I mean, almost everything that Hunter wrote as journalism is like priceless. It's gonna last hundreds of years anyway, just because of how crisp the prose was. But this book was him, when he was on an unbelievable hot streak, and he just hit the exact perfect theme at the exact right time in his life, and it came out like a jewel. I think even Twain would be jealous of this book in a way. One of Twain would have been jealous, and he would have understood it. He would have understood it as a fable. He wrote these kind of fables. This trip to the underworld is interesting, but I'm going to say one other thing about it. At the end, I think Hunter was cautioning America about something. He wasn't just drawing you and seducing you and displaying his prowess. He was doing all that too. But at the end, I think he was really wanting to say something. And I think it was, the orgy ain't going to last. We're lucky to be alive on this planet. And every time you go so close to the fire, you increase your chances of never coming out of it. And I think he was worried about this is the early 70s. I think he was worried about America that had not learned, had gone through this party, but hadn't learned from the party and was going to repeat the mistakes. I think he was saying, like, this was enough. We fully delved into this question, and here's the answer, and we don't have to keep doing it. Yep. And at the end, he also has a brutal assessment of his own profession. Why bother with newspapers if this is all they offer? Agnew was right. Excuse the antiquated language. The press is a gang of cruel faggots. Journalism is not a profession or a trade. It is a cheap catch-all for fuck-offs and misfits, a false doorway to the backside of life, a filthy, piss-ridden little hole nailed off by the building inspector, but just deep enough for a wino to curl up from the sidewalk and masturbate like a chimp in a zoo cage. So that's how he feels.
And Twain felt the exact same thing. He said, if you've ever read, the best thing is to be uninformed rather than misinformed by reading the paper. I mean, Twain having been a journalist, had as much contempt. And it's funny that we haven't taken that to heart, because Matt, you just touched on something. What it really is, and also is this extreme satire of every junket that every journalist has ever gone on.
Oh, well, that's true too. Yeah.
It was like this ultimate English farce where, you open a bedroom door and you see like the prime minister and the whole parliament having sex together. He was saying, like, this is what journalists, those people you see on TV, these people who have bylines, this is a worst case scenario for what they're really doing before they come out and tell you about the story.
Before they put the tie on and give you the dignified account. Right. This is what they're like behind closed doors. But this is what we're all like.
He was the last journalist in some ways, because he fully and finally and memorably exposed the fact that backstage, it's not that we're making it up, it's just that we're lost.
Exactly. Anyway, great book. And I'm glad to share it with you. Thanks everybody for being so patient with me last week, and thank you, Walter, again for the same thing. And I will try to stay off higher ground for the near future. But I'm hearing that there will be lots of interesting stuff happening this week, so we should have an interesting show later this week. But see you later, and thanks everybody. Talk to you soon.
Thanks.